Nestled within the heart of Pennsylvania, Centralia was once a thriving mining town. The streets bustled with life, children played, and the hum of industry filled the air. But all of that changed in 1962 when a coal seam fire ignited beneath the town. As the years passed, the fire continued to rage beneath the surface, turning Centralia into a ghost town, its streets cracked and empty, the air thick with the acrid scent of burning coal. Few dared to venture into Centralia, and those who did seldom spoke of what they found. The government had declared the town uninhabitable, but that didn't stop a handful of curious souls from exploring its eerie landscape. Among them was Anna, a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering the supernatural. She had heard the stories, whispers of shadows that moved on their own, voices that echoed in the fog, and apparitions that lingered in the corners of one's vision. Anna arrived in Centralia on a foggy autumn morning. The chill in the air bit at her skin as she stepped out of her car, camera and notebook in hand. The town's silence was oppressive, broken only by the occasional hiss of steam rising from the ground. She felt a shiver run down her spine, but she pushed the feeling aside. This was her chance to uncover the truth, to capture the essence of Centralia's haunted legacy. As she walked through the deserted streets, Anna couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The town was empty, but she felt eyes on her, unseen and unblinking. She stopped in front of an old church, its steeple leaning precariously to one side. The door was ajar, and curiosity got the better of her. She stepped inside, the wooden floorboards creaking under her weight. The interior of the church was cloaked in shadows. Pews sat empty, a layer of dust coating their surfaces. A beam of light filtered through a broken, stained glass window, casting an eerie glow on the altar. Anna moved forward, her footsteps echoing in the silence. As she approached the altar, she noticed something strange, a book, open and untouched by time, its pages yellowed but intact. She reached out to touch the book, but a sudden chill filled the air, freezing her in place. The temperature dropped rapidly and her breath came out in visible puffs. She turned around, feeling a presence behind her. The shadows seemed to deepen, coalescing into a figure standing at the back of the church. Anna's heart pounded in her chest as she tried to make out the figure's features, but it remained indistinct, a dark silhouette. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, but she heard a low, guttural whisper that seemed to come from all around her. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was menacing, filled with anger and pain. Anna took a step back, her eyes never leaving the shadowy figure. The air grew colder and she felt a tug on her sleeve as if something was trying to pull her away. She turned and ran, her footsteps echoing in the empty church. She burst through the doors and into the foggy streets, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The fog seemed thicker now, the buildings around her distorted and ghostly. She stumbled down the street, her mind racing. What had she just seen? Was it a ghost, or something more sinister? Anna decided to head to the town's cemetery. It was said to be the most haunted place in Centralia, and she hoped to find some answers there. The path to the cemetery was overgrown, the gate hanging off its hinges. She pushed through the tall grass, the gravestones looming in the mist. She could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, the sorrow of the lives lost to the fire and the town's slow decay. As she walked among the graves, she noticed a particular headstone that seemed newer than the others. It was engraved with the name Evelyn Carter, and the date of death, 2002, long after the town had been abandoned. Curiosity piqued, Anna knelt beside the grave, running her fingers over the cold stone. "Evelyn Carter," she murmured, pulling out her notebook. "Who were you, and why are you here?" She took a photo of the headstone, the flash illuminating the foggy air. As she reviewed the photo on her camera, she froze. Behind her, in the frame, was the same shadowy figure she had seen in the church. It stood a few feet away, its form barely discernible in the mist. Anna spun around, but there was nothing there, just the fog and the silent gravestones. Her heart raced as she backed away, her mind reeling. She had to leave, to get out of this town before it was too late. She turned and hurried back to her car, the oppressive silence pressing in on her. As she reached her car, she heard a voice, clear and distinct, whispering her name, "Anna!" She whipped around, but the street was empty. The fog swirled around her, thick and suffocating. She fumbled for her keys, her hands shaking. As she unlocked the car, she felt a hand on her shoulder. She screamed, spinning around to face her unseen assailant, but there was no one there. Tears streamed down her face as she jumped into her car and slammed the door shut. She started the engine, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. As she drove out of Centralia, she glanced in the rearview mirror. The shadowy figure stood in the middle of the road, watching her leave. Anna didn't stop driving until she reached the next town. She pulled into a gas station, her hands still trembling. She got out of the car and walked inside, needing to feel the presence of other people, to reassure herself that she was safe. The clerk behind the counter gave her a concerned look as she approached. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. I think so," Anna replied, her voice shaky. "I was in Centralia. Do you know anything about Evelyn Carter?" The clerk's face paled at the mention of the name. He looked around nervously before leaning in close. "You shouldn't have gone there," he said in a hushed tone. "Evelyn Carter was the last person to live in Centralia. She stayed behind when everyone else left, said she couldn't leave her family. She died in that house of hers, but some say she never left." Anna felt a chill run down her spine. "Do you know where her house is?" The clerk nodded. "It's on the edge of town, near the old mine entrance, but listen, you shouldn't go back there. The fire, the spirits, it's not safe." Anna thanked the clerk and left the gas station, her mind racing. She had to go back, had to find out what had happened to Evelyn Carter. She needed to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The drive back to Centralia was filled with a sense of dread. The fog had lifted slightly, revealing the charred landscape. As she approached the outskirts of town, she saw the house the clerk had mentioned. It was dilapidated, its windows broken, and its roof partially collapsed. Anna parked her car and approached the house cautiously. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and sulfur. She pushed open the front door, which creaked ominously. The interior was dark, lit only by the dim light filtering through the broken windows. The walls were covered in soot, and the floor was littered with debris. She moved through the house, her footsteps echoing in the silence. In the living room, she found a photo album lying on the floor. She picked it up, carefully turning the pages. The photos were old, showing a happy family, Evelyn, her husband, and their 2 children. They smiled at the camera, unaware of the tragedy that would befall them. As she flipped through the album, Anna felt a presence behind her. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. Evelyn Carter stood in the doorway, her form translucent and ghostly. Her eyes were filled with sorrow, and she seemed to be looking past Anna, to some distant memory. "Evelyn?" Anna whispered, her voice trembling. The apparition didn't respond, but Anna felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She understood now. Evelyn had stayed behind because she couldn't bear to leave her family's memories behind. The fire had taken everything from her, but she had refused to let it take her spirit. Anna reached out, her hand passing through Evelyn's form. The ghostly figure faded, leaving behind a sense of peace. Anna knew what she had to do. She gathered the photo album and left the house, heading for the cemetery. As she stood before Evelyn's grave, she placed the photo album on the ground. "Rest in peace, Evelyn," she whispered. "Your story won't be forgotten." The air seemed to lighten, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. Anna felt a sense of closure, as if she had helped Evelyn find some measure of peace. She turned and walked back to her car, the fog lifting to reveal the charred but beautiful landscape of Centralia. As she drove away, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. She glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Evelyn's ghostly form standing by the side of the road, watching her leave. But this time, there was no menace in the apparition's gaze, only gratitude. Anna knew she would never forget her time in Centralia, and the echoes of the town's haunted past would stay with her forever. But she had uncovered the truth, and in doing so, had given Evelyn Carter the peace she deserved.